My name is Jennifer, and I'm 36 years old. If someone were to ask me, is family where you belong? I'd probably let out a dry laugh and say, not for me. I was born in the suburbs of Sacramento, California, in a 3-bedroom house with a front yard and a red brick walkway. It sounds peaceful, but inside that house, I was just a faint shadow, forgotten in the glow of my sister, Victoria. Victoria is 9 years older than me. Before I could even speak, she was already the pride and joy of our parents. Energetic, smart, a great singer and dancer. Victoria was the spotlight and I was just the backdrop. My mom used to tell the neighbors while holding me. This one was a surprise, but we were already complete with Victoria. She'd say it with a light laugh, like it was a harmless joke, but I heard it loud and clear. And I never forgot it. My dad was a civil engineer, and my mom was an elementary school teacher. They were both exhausted after long days, and a surprised child, was always the reason behind their weary sighs. By the time I was 5, I was used to hearing my dad tell my grandpa, "You wanted her, didn't you? Then you take care of her." That line came like clockwork every morning when my grandparents came to pick me up. The keys jingled in his hand as he walked away, never once looking back. My grandparents' house was about a 10-minute drive from ours, but to me it felt like a whole different world. It smelled of fresh-baked cookies, had a cozy sofa, and my grandma's gentle eyes. I called it the real home. There, my name was spoken with affection. I got help with my homework, and my grandpa, a retired math professor, would tell me stories about how numbers could speak. "Truth lies in numbers, not in sweet words," he used to say when I was confused by my first charts. My grandma had been a high school teacher, so she was very patient. After every study session, she'd sit with me at the old wooden table, going over my writing and correcting spelling errors in purple ink. "You know, Jen," she'd say, "knowledge is the one thing no one can ever take from you." I nodded, even though I didn't fully understand her yet. But I knew what love felt like. Warm, without judgment, unconditional. Meanwhile, at my parents' house, I felt like a stranger in my own home. They didn't openly dislike me. They just didn't notice me. If I came home 5 minutes late, there might be no dinner left. Parent-teacher conferences usually had an empty chair where they should have been. I wasn't angry. I was used to it. Victoria was different. Every birthday came with a big party, a 3-tiered cake, and even a small band in the backyard. Me? A single candle stuck in a store-bought cake. I didn't expect much, just once for Mom to ask what I wished for before I blew out the candle, but that never happened. Victoria never acted like she hated me. She just never really saw me. When she was stretched out on the sofa, chatting on the phone with her friends, I sat in the corner of the room, quietly playing with old dolls my grandma had given me. Once, I tried to start a conversation, but she just replied with a distracted, "Yeah," and turned away. I got the message. I didn't belong in her world. My parents didn't hide their favoritism. At every family gathering, they couldn't stop bragging about Victoria's achievements. Vic got another A in history, or Vic was picked to lead the spring festival committee. As for me, no one asked if I was keeping up with school, if I had friends, or if I'd ever won any awards. They were too busy basking in Victoria's glow to notice I was growing up too. And I used to think that once my sister left for college, my parents would finally notice me. But I was wrong. So wrong. When Victoria left, I didn't get more attention. I just got more chores. And that's when I started to understand. My presence had never been truly welcomed. I wasn't part of them. I was just a responsibility they couldn't deny. I don't know how many times I swallowed the lump in my throat just to avoid crying in front of them. But thanks to my grandparents, I learned to be strong. I learned to quietly remember everything, and then use that past as fuel, because one day, I'd walk out of that house. As someone who chose her own life. I was 14 when Victoria officially left for her freshman year at Boston University. The day she wheeled her suitcase off the porch, my mom cried like she was going away forever. My dad kept saying, "She's grown now. A girl like Vic is bound for success. And me? I stood in the kitchen doorway, dish rag in hand, completely invisible in that moment. I thought things would change after she left, that my parents would turn their eyes toward me, that the house would echo with new laughter, mine. But no, they didn't see me more, they just saw what needed doing. That same evening, just as I was heading upstairs to do homework, my mom called out from the living room. "Jennifer, do the dishes and clean the kitchen, okay? I'm tired." I still remember standing frozen at the sink, hot water running between my fingers, stinging. Not from the heat, but from something else, a feeling I couldn't quite name. I knew this was the beginning of something unfair, with no way out. Every afternoon after school, I wasn't allowed to set my bag down until I finished the to-do list my mom scribbled on a sticky note and slapped onto the fridge. Clean the stairs, vacuum the living room, do the laundry, fold clothes, check expiration dates in the fridge, prep dinner. If I missed one task, my mom would say, "You live in this house, you should help out." Vic was never this lazy. She said it so often I thought I'd misheard her if a day ever passed without the comparison. I knew every setting on the old washer in the basement, knew how to season roast chicken just right for Dad, and memorized Mom's favorite snacks for her late-night TV marathons. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Once, I asked if I could skip dinner prep to study for finals. My mom said just one thing. "I guess getting an A is more important than feeding your family, huh?" I didn't answer. I quietly went to the kitchen, left my books on my desk, hands shaking as I chopped onions, eyes stinging but holding back tears. On weekends, while my friends were at the movies or hanging out at the mall, I was scrubbing the bathroom, organizing closets, or mopping the kitchen floor. When I asked my dad if I could join the school's academic team, he waved me off. "Finish your chores first. That stuff's a waste of time." So I started staying up late to study. My bedroom light glowed past midnight. One time, my mom came in and shut it off, saying coldly, "Go to bed. If you're tired tomorrow, who's going to do the chores?" My room was small, tucked at the end of the hallway next to the storage closet. The walls were thin, so I could hear the TV from the living room every night, my parents' laughter during game shows, or Mom chatting on the phone about Victoria. She'd just been chosen for an internship at a big marketing firm. "She's amazing," Mom said proudly. "She really is our pride." And me? I stayed quiet. Only my grandparents still called every Sunday night, even though they were both getting frail. They asked how school was, if I was eating enough, if I was happy. I always smiled and said, "I'm doing fine," even though nothing felt fine, but I didn't want them to worry. One night, after finishing my chores and studying until I was drained, I pulled an old shipping box out from under my bed. It held my grandma's handwritten letters, birthday cards, and a few photos of me and my grandparents at the park. I flipped through each one, searching for a part of myself in those rare, peaceful days. One card had her handwriting, "You are a little light. Keep shining patiently. One day the whole world will see your glow." I clutched that card tight. No one in that house had ever called me their pride, but I wouldn't let life pass without someone ever seeing my worth. I started researching scholarship programs online. Every night, after all the chores were done, I opened the old computer and scoured university websites. I didn't know what was waiting out there, but one thing was certain. I was going to leave that house. Not to escape, but to truly live. And I would live on my own terms. I got acceptance letters from 3 universities all at once, on a rainy Wednesday morning. The feeling of opening those thick envelopes, my fingers trembling as I read, "Congratulations, Jennifer," I could hardly breathe. I did it. After all those years of quietly enduring, studying, and serving like a shadow in my own home, I had my ticket out. That night, I laid the 3 letters on the dining table, hoping for one small moment I thought I deserved. A look of approval, a simple, "Well done, sweetheart," from my parents. But when my mom glanced at the envelopes, she just shook her head and went back to clearing the dishes. My dad didn't even look up from the TV. "I need to talk to you about tuition," I said, gathering all the courage I had. My mom let out a long sigh, like I'd just interrupted something important. "Jennifer, honestly, we can't help you with that." I stared at her. "But I thought you had a college savings fund." She set the plate down and wiped her hands on the dish towel. "The thing is, we used that money to pay for Victoria's wedding. You know, an outdoor event in Santa Barbara isn't cheap. There was the band, the flowers, the 5-course dinner." I swallowed hard. The wedding had taken place nearly a year ago, lasting 2 days, complete with fireworks and a live band. I had served guests the whole time, arms bruised from carrying supplies, while Victoria looked like a princess straight out of a fairy tale. Now I knew where that money came from. "But if I'm your child too," I said softly, barely recognizing my own voice. "But I'm your child too," I said softly, barely recognizing my own voice. My dad, still glued to the TV screen, said just one sentence. "You can take out a loan. Kids these days all borrow to go to college. That's what being an adult is about." I stood there, overcome by a cold, stinging kind of feeling. They didn't reject me loudly. They just never considered me at all. That night, I pulled out my phone and called my grandparents. Grandma picked up. She heard my voice and immediately knew something was wrong. "Sweetheart, why do you sound like you're about to cry?" I didn't hold it in anymore. All the tears I had ever pushed down came flooding out. I told her everything. About getting into college, about the 3 acceptance letters I'd laid on the table, and about my parents' cold refusal. On the other end, I heard Grandpa clear his throat gently, then his voice came through, slow and steady. "My girl, don't worry. We've been preparing for this day for a long time." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "The day you were born," he continued, "I opened a savings account in your name. At first, I just wanted to set something aside in case you ever needed something important. But the more I saw how your parents treated you, the more certain I became. You'd need this to build your own life." The next day, my grandparents invited me over. On the table was a thick envelope filled with bank documents, statements, savings books, and a detailed plan for covering college expenses. "You can choose any school you want," Grandma said, holding my hand tight. "Don't ever think you're not worthy." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, but because for the first time in my life, I felt like someone truly believed in me, not because of achievements or expectations, but simply because I was me. I moved in with my grandparents just a few days later. My parents didn't protest. They didn't even get up from the living room when I carried my suitcase out the door. Mom said one sentence I'll never forget: "Do whatever you think is best." I wasn't sure if she felt relieved or just didn't care anymore. But I knew one thing: I was leaving a place that had made me feel small and invisible. It was the first fall where the air actually felt fresh. I chose Stanford University. I majored in finance. I made a decision. If they dismissed my worth, I'd make the world recognize it. And I'd begin on the very path they never imagined I could walk. I set foot on Stanford's campus on a misty morning, both nervous and excited. Everything here was big, modern, and challenging, and because of that, I felt like I belonged. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the unexpected child or the one who stayed home while her sister shined. I was Jennifer, a finance major with a dream no one could take away. At first, I was overwhelmed. My classmates were brilliant, most had attended elite high schools, had family support and connections in the industry. I arrived with 2 suitcases, an old laptop, and a childhood full of hard-earned lessons about discipline and resilience. But I quickly realized, knowledge doesn't care where you come from, and I had something not everyone did: a burning drive to prove I deserved to be here. I studied day and night, read twice the assigned materials, joined investment analysis clubs, and attended every workshop I could. By the end of my freshman year, I was selected for a special mentorship program for high-potential students. My mentor was Mrs. Keller, a former investment fund director in Chicago, known for her sharp mind and tough standards. She told me in our first meeting, "The world of finance doesn't favor the faint-hearted. You have a quiet exterior, but your eyes say otherwise." I didn't let her down. The summer after sophomore year, I landed an internship at a financial firm in San Francisco. By junior year, I became the only student in my cohort invited to an investment conference in New York. During financial analysis project presentations, I stood before dozens of investors, mic in hand, heart racing but mind clear, voice steady like never before. Professor Carson, who taught behavioral economics, once told me after a presentation, "Jennifer, you don't just have the skills. You have the presence of someone who will change the game." I graduated summa cum laude with a full-ride scholarship, receiving multiple job offers. But I knew what I wanted. I wanted to go to New York, the place where billion-dollar financial decisions are made in towering offices, where I wouldn't be chasing someone else's spotlight. I'd make my own. I accepted a job at a major investment bank in Manhattan. In the early days, I worked until 2 or 3 a.m., analyzing reports, checking every figure, adjusting every strategy. I didn't complain. Compared to years of cooking and cleaning without recognition, at least here my effort was rewarded with real opportunity. In my second year, I got promoted. In my third, I led a North American market analysis team. When I entered meeting rooms, I no longer looked down or avoided eye contact. I walked in as someone who knew what she was doing and knew she deserved to be there. During those years, I had little contact with my parents or Victoria. They rarely called, and I didn't reach out. The only updates I got about them came through phone calls with my grandparents. They were always there, calling weekly, asking about my work, sending homemade cookies on holidays, and writing little handwritten notes like, "You're our shining star, keep glowing." I often wondered, if not for them, would I have had the strength to rise out of the swamp of my childhood? Probably not, because it was them who planted the belief in me that I wasn't invisible, that I was worthy of love and recognition. I moved into a small but modern apartment on the Upper East Side, with windows overlooking Central Park. Every morning, I brewed coffee, watched the rush of people below, and reminded myself, I got here on my own. No favors, no permission, just my own strength. Life seemed to be on a beautiful path, but I didn't know that the past would come back in the most unexpected way. And when it did, I'd have to face not only the people I left behind, but also the wounds in my heart that never truly healed. I was preparing for a Q3 investment strategy presentation when my phone buzzed. The caller was my grandfather's doctor. A vague sense of dread crept down my spine. I apologized to my colleagues, stepped out of the conference room, and answered. "Jennifer, your grandfather was admitted to the hospital this morning. He had a sudden heart attack. We did everything we could." I didn't hear the rest. My ears rang and the sounds around me faded into nothing. Everything blurred like someone had drawn the curtains on my life. 3 hours later, I arrived at St. Joseph's Hospital in Sacramento. The room was stark white, the smell of disinfectant sharp, the empty hospital bed unbearable. My grandmother sat beside it, her eyes lost, wrinkled hands clutching a frayed handkerchief. "He went quickly," she said, voice hoarse like the wind. "You were the last thing he mentioned before he passed." I couldn't hold back my tears. The man who taught me how to read financial newspapers when I was just 10, who took me to the park every Sunday afternoon, who believed I could change my life, was gone. After the funeral, my grandparents' house became hauntingly quiet. Everything in it remained the same, as if he might still walk out of the reading room and ask, "Would you like some tea?" But the air felt different. My grandmother seemed like she had lost her soul. She tried to stay composed, to smile, but the deep hollowness in her eyes betrayed the loneliness she carried. 2 months later, she passed away in her sleep, peacefully, just like the way she had lived. The doctor said there was no serious illness, only that her heart couldn't carry the weight any longer. Like me, she didn't know how to live without him. I returned to their old house to sort through paperwork and arrange her funeral. While going through old envelopes, I found a letter, addressed to me in that familiar, shaky handwriting. Inside was a notarized copy of my grandparents' will from 3 years ago. To our beloved granddaughter, Jennifer. We leave the house at 324 Maple Drive and $120,000 as a thank you for bringing light into our later years. I was speechless. The place that had been my only safe haven growing up was now the final gift they left me, a final affirmation. I wasn't an afterthought in this family. I was someone they had chosen to love. The reading of the will took place in a lawyer's office in Sacramento. My parents sat on one side, silent but clearly expectant. Victoria was busy on her phone, while I quietly sat across from them. Mr. Jenkins, the attorney, wore glasses and read the document in an even tone. When he reached my name, he paused slightly, as if to emphasize, "The house at 324 Maple Drive and the entire savings account of $120,000 are left to Ms. Jennifer Collins." The air turned instantly cold. My mother gripped my father's sleeve and Victoria let out a sharp breath, almost panicked. No one spoke, but their eyes said everything. "I understand this might come as a surprise," the lawyer continued, "but the grandparents made their wishes clear with a special note addressed to Mrs. Margaret, Jennifer's mother." He opened a smaller envelope and read slowly, "Margaret, we once gave you $180,000 to help with Victoria's wedding, right when you needed it most. Now, please respect our final decision for Jennifer, the granddaughter who was always there when we needed someone." For the first time in my life, I saw my mother lose her usual composure. She turned away, hiding her disappointed expression, but said nothing. Victoria gave a short, bitter laugh and stood abruptly. "Well then, congrats. You've always known how to win people over." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Those words no longer carried any weight. I didn't need their validation anymore. My grandparents had already given me that, in a way no one could take away. That night, I sat alone in the old living room, staring out at the garden where my grandfather used to read. October in Sacramento was starting to bring a chill. I told myself, this place wouldn't just be filled with memories. I would turn it into a new beginning. I had no idea that the very people I thought were out of my life were about to return, and this time, they weren't coming out of love. They were coming with demands. It took me nearly a year to heal from the loss of both my grandparents. The house at 324 Maple Drive was now full of memories, yet so empty that it made my heart ache every time I stepped inside. The old photos, the tea cabinet, the hand-embroidered tablecloth, all of it seemed to beg me to stay. But I knew my grandparents wouldn't want me to live in the past. One early spring afternoon, with soft golden sunlight spilling through the windows, I sat at the dining table, flipping through documents, deep in thought. This house had once sheltered me, but maybe now it was time for it to become a doorway to something better. And then the thought hit me, unexpected but clear. I would sell my grandparents' house and use that money to buy my parents a new home, where they could spend their retirement comfortably. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Maybe gratitude. Maybe a shift in the way they saw me. Or maybe it was just a part of me that still couldn't shake the need to be accepted. Even though I knew that might never happen. I called my parents one weeknight. "I want to meet you this weekend. It's something important." I heard a brief hesitation from my mother. "What's it about, Jennifer?" "I'll tell you in person. Let's meet this weekend." We agreed to meet at a small cafe in the suburbs of Fremont where they were living in a cramped apartment after retiring. Dad looked thinner than the last time I'd seen him, his hair fully gray. Mom still wore her familiar stern expression, but her eyes showed signs of weariness. I began, trying to keep my voice calm. "I've decided to sell Grandma and Grandpa's house, and I want to use the money to buy you a new one. Something small, one story, with a garden. Easy to maintain." They stared at me in shock. For a moment, I thought I saw Dad's eyes glisten, something I had rarely seen. Mom put down her teacup, her hands slightly trembling. You're serious? She asked, her voice almost choked. I'm not joking. The silence hung for a few seconds. Then my mother suddenly started crying. Not loudly, but quietly. The kind of tears I'd never seen her shed for me. We don't deserve you, she said between soft sobs. Vic is unemployed. She and her husband are always fighting. And you've always been so strong and still thinking about us. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled gently and handed them a printed list of the houses I'd been considering. 2 weeks later, we chose a small home in Pleasant Hill. A single-story, ranch-style house with a backyard full of lavender and large windows looking out at maple trees. My mother said, "It feels like a place to start over." After the deal closed, my father hugged me for the first time since I was a child. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Not for the house, but for not giving up on us." I nodded and simply said, "I think that's what Grandma and Grandpa would have wanted too." Right after that, Mom began planning the housewarming party. "It has to be grand," she said, her eyes lighting up. "We'll invite everyone, flowers, a buffet, a photo wall." I nodded. "Just let me know when you need help." "Oh, don't worry. I'll handle it all. You're busy with work. Just relax. Just make sure you're there that day. I want you to look your best." At the time, I thought maybe things really had changed. Maybe, for the first time in years, I was truly part of this family. But I had no idea that the very housewarming party I wasn't invited to would be the turning point that revealed everything. And this time, there would be no forgiveness. I started to feel uneasy when 3 weeks passed without a formal invitation to the party. Every time I called to check in, Mom would just laugh it off. "We're still planning. You know how long these things take." Dad would give vague answers. "Let your mom finish organizing. Just make sure you show up." But no one gave me a specific date. I was busy with work in New York, so I didn't dwell on it. Until one Friday night, when I opened Facebook to look up a potential client and accidentally typed Victoria Collins into the search bar. Even though I'd never added my sister on social media, I could still see the public section of her profile. The first post that popped up left me frozen. "Can't believe the big housewarming party is this weekend. The new place is truly a dream come true. Can't wait to show it off to everyone." Below the caption was a series of photos. A long banquet table draped in white cloth, flowers everywhere, sound equipment being set up, and boxes labeled Victoria stacked by the front entrance. In the background, I clearly recognized it. The house in Pleasant Hill that I had bought with the money from my grandparents' house and my own savings. My world tilted. My hand stiffened on the mouse, my heart pounding like a countdown clock. Not a single word of invitation, not one heads up. And yet, my entire family, including Victoria, her husband Andrew, and their twin kids, had moved into that house. And now they were celebrating it as if it were a shared family achievement, while the person who made it possible was left outside. I couldn't sit still. The next morning, I flew back to California, rented a car, and drove to Pleasant Hill. I parked a block away from the house and could already hear the music and laughter in the distance. People were coming and going, string lights hung across the porch, and cars lined the street. I recognized a few familiar faces. Relatives, old neighbors, even some of my high school teachers. No one knew I was standing there. I quietly walked along the side path and opened the side gate to the backyard. The scent of lavender from the garden hit me like a wave of memory. But it no longer brought warmth like it did on the day I handed over the house. Just a bitter taste in my throat. Through the kitchen window, I saw my mother placing pastries onto a tray, wearing the silk blouse she once said she'd save for a truly special occasion. My father was chatting with the group, holding a wine glass, boasting, "We're very lucky. Vic helped a lot with the down payment. It was a family effort to get this house." I froze. Victoria stood nearby, holding her son and smiling brightly. Mom and Dad deserve to live in a home like this. We just did what needed to be done. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. None of them mentioned me. No one acknowledged the fact that the entire house, from the roof tiles to the floorboards, was paid for with my money. I stepped in through the back door, my voice oddly calm. How strange. Everyone seems to have forgotten who actually bought this house. The crowded room fell silent. All eyes turned to me as if I were some uninvited stranger. My mother dropped the tray of pastries, and Victoria's eyes went wide. My father was the first to speak, his voice uneasy. "Jennifer, you're here. We were just about to invite you." "Really?" I looked him straight in the eye. Then why did I find out about this party from Victoria's post? And why are all her family's belongings piled up in this house? My mother took a deep breath and changed her tone. "You make it sound like we've stolen something. This is a family home, not owned by just one person. Vic helped a lot, you just don't understand." "Helped?" I pulled a copy of the property deed from my purse and held it up. "I am the sole owner of this house. No one else contributed a cent. No one asked for my opinion. Yet the family threw a housewarming party without inviting me and built an entirely different story around it." Victoria stepped forward, trying to stay composed. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We just thought Mom and Dad needed a place to live, and this house, it's the best fit." I didn't respond. I turned to the crowd and spoke, softly but clearly. "Sorry to interrupt, but I am the legal owner of this house, and I'm asking everyone to leave, right now." No one said a word. In that moment, the bright lights and cheerful music seemed to shrink away. I stood in the middle of the home I had purchased with hope for connection, and all I saw was a betrayal deeper than any insult. And that's when I understood. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed the same again. The silence in the house was almost absolute. Only the soft music from the speakers outside continued to play, awkward and ironic. I stood in the freshly painted living room, holding the certified deed in my hand, my name, Jennifer Collins, clearly printed at the top. No one could say a thing. My father blinked and shook his head, like trying to dismiss a bad dream. "You're overreacting, Jen. This is a family home. You're just holding the title." I looked him dead in the eye. "What did you just say? Holding the title? This is my legal property, bought with my money after I sold the house my grandparents left me, the one you never paid a dime to maintain. I took you house hunting, signed the contracts, handled all the paperwork, and today you throw a grand party without inviting me while letting Vic move in like it's hers." My mother stepped forward, pale but trying to stay calm. "We're family, Jennifer. You can't let paperwork override blood. Think about it. Vic's kids need a home. Your father and I need stability too." "I'm not arguing about that," I said, my voice firm. "What I can't accept is the lying, claiming Vic contributed, leaving me out of something I created through memories and sacrifice." Victoria crossed her arms, eyes defiant. "If you gave it, you can't take it back. You're being petty, Jen. A home is meant to be shared, not owned like a prize people are expected to grovel for." I took a deep breath, resisting the urge to laugh at how easily she twisted things. "You're right, a home is meant to be shared, but not with people who don't appreciate it. I was going to let everyone live here, really, until I was shut out of my own home and saw my family rewrite the story without me in it." I turned to the scattered guests, on the sofa, in the kitchen, down the hallway, neighbors, relatives, old friends. "I'm sorry to disrupt the party, but I believe you deserve the truth. This is my house. I never gifted it, never signed it over. And I don't permit anyone to move in without my consent. Not even family." I turned back, my voice now low but ice cold. "So I'm asking all guests to leave now. And Mom, Dad, Vic, I want all three of you out within 48 hours. I'll involve my lawyer if I have to." Victoria stepped forward as if to argue, but Andrew, her husband, grabbed her arm. He whispered something I couldn't hear, but his face had changed. The confidence was gone. No more smirking. My mother looked shattered. "You can't do this. We're family." "Jennifer, please, don't let it go this far." I tightened my grip on the documents, the anger now replaced by a familiar cold, the feeling of being dismissed, excluded, then blamed for daring to demand acknowledgement. "No, Mom," I said. "This time I can, and I will." One by one, the guests began to leave. Some looked at me with pity, others avoided my gaze entirely. I didn't blame them. They weren't the ones who pushed me out of the family. They were witnesses to the moment I stepped out of the role of the quiet daughter. Victoria was the last to leave the living room, holding her twins' hands. She glanced at me one more time. The pride was gone. Only bitterness and disappointment remained. "You'll regret this," she said softly. "Family isn't something you just throw away like a toy." I didn't respond. I stood on the porch as they drove away, the party lights dimming behind me. The house fell quiet. This time for real. But inside, I'd never felt more certain. For the first time, I had defended myself. 2 days after the interrupted housewarming, I returned to the Pleasant Hill house with a strange emptiness inside. The front yard was cleaner than ever. No more cars, no decorations. The house was mine again, just like I intended. But the price to reclaim it was a deep cut through what I used to call family. My parents, Victoria and her family, had moved out quietly. I wasn't there when they left. I had left the keys in the mailbox and asked my lawyer to oversee the process. They returned to my parents' old apartment in Hayward, which barely fit 2 people, now crammed with 6. My parents, Victoria, her husband, and their 8-year-old twins. I didn't need to imagine how suffocating it must be. And it took just 1 day before the messages started pouring in. First came a text from my mother. "You think I'm not heartbroken? What you did was cruel." Then a missed call from my dad's number. I didn't answer. Then Victoria, with a voice I could never mistake. "You think you have the right to punish us, but you're the selfish one." The messages kept coming all week. Sometimes they begged, "I know we were wrong, but you broke this family. Can't you undo it?" Other times they accused, "Your grandparents must be disappointed in heaven. This is the last thing they'd want." I read them all. I didn't delete them, but I didn't reply. I put my phone on silent, blocked all 4 of them, and set up a new email just for work and financial updates. The old inbox where they'd sent dozens of angry or pleading messages, I simply left unopened. I didn't cut ties out of rage. I did it because, for the first time, I saw what my childhood had blurred. To them, I only had value when I served, when I stayed quiet, when I stayed behind someone else's light. But the moment I dared to be seen, to be heard, to be respected, I became the enemy. The house in Pleasant Hill was now eerily quiet. I hired a professional cleaning crew to scrub away every trace of the party, from tape residue behind the fridge to wine stains on the hardwood. I changed the locks, updated the security system, and reset all the lighting. I stood in the freshly painted living room, sunlight streaming through the white curtains, feeling peaceful, but not light. Some choices, even when right, still carry weight when you actually make them. One Friday afternoon, I drove past the apartment complex where my parents now lived. I didn't plan to stop, just wanted to see. Kids ran around the playground, a few adults sat under trees reading. I saw Victoria on the balcony, phone in hand, hair tied up. Her kids sat on the floor fighting over a tablet. My mom stepped out with a sandwich for them, then quietly went back inside. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. Just a brief sadness for what could have been if they had ever truly seen me as part of the family. I turned the car around and went home. That night, I began organizing my grandparents' keepsakes. In an old wooden box, I found a letter I'd never opened. It was from my grandmother, addressed to me. Inside were a few simple lines that made my heart crack open. If one day you must choose between love and justice, remember, we chose you, not because you were perfect, but because you were true. never feel guilty for protecting your heart. I placed the letter back, feeling light for the first time in weeks. Family isn't where you're born, it's where you're accepted. And if they couldn't do that, I chose to leave. So I could protect the gentleness in me before it was twisted by endless hurt. 2 months after the ruined housewarming, I signed the contract to sell the Pleasant Hill house. It wasn't a rash decision. It was the result of many silent, sleepless nights. That house had once symbolized devotion and healing, but now it held too many warped memories, too many twisted words and misplaced emotions. I sold it for a good price thanks to the rising real estate market. The profit, combined with my savings and income, allowed me to invest in a private fund, not just a financial plan for the future, but a foundation for the life I truly wanted. Free, independent, and no longer seeking approval from people who never really saw me. I moved into a small penthouse in Tribeca, Manhattan, with a balcony overlooking the Hudson River and soft morning light filtering through the blinds. Not extravagant, not flashy, but mine. Chosen and built with real effort. Each morning I got up early, brewed coffee, opened the balcony door, and wrote a few lines in the old leather journal my grandmother gave me. Some days I wrote investment plans. Some days I wrote about my grandparents, the only people who ever believed in me without conditions. And sometimes I just wrote one line. Today, I'm okay. And that's worth something. I haven't spoken to my family since that day, though occasionally there are emails from my mother, a few missed calls from my father's old number. I've learned not to open doors that only bring pain. I'm not angry anymore, but I know this. Some relationships, forgiveness, doesn't mean continuation. I started dedicating time to things that made me feel real, speaking at financial empowerment events for young women, writing about personal finance, and most importantly, I founded a scholarship in my grandparents' name, the Henderson Grant for Daughters of Silence, for girls who were overlooked by their families but carried dreams like I once did. One day, during a podcast interview with a colleague, I was asked, "Jennifer, if you had a daughter someday, what would you teach her?" I didn't hesitate. That she doesn't have to outshine anyone to be loved, that in her home, no one will ever feel like an outsider, and that her mother, me, will always be her first defender, not because she's perfect, but because she's hers. I never wanted a family early in life. My past made me wary of the word family, but now, I feel more ready than ever to build a home, not built on blood, but on respect, kindness, and unconditional love. I know I won't repeat my mother's cycle. I won't compare my child to anyone. I won't use silence as punishment. I won't burden them with expectations that aren't theirs. I'll love my child with everything I lacked, and more. One day, while walking past a small bookstore near my home, I saw a book with a cover that made me stop. No one is extra when they write their own story. I smiled, placing my hand on its spine like I was looking into a mirror. I was once the child no one expected, the forgotten one, my sister's shadow. But today, I'm the author of my next chapter. Written with ink of faith, paper of determination, and titled with my own name, Jennifer Collins. And if you ask me what the biggest lesson is from everything I've been through, I'd say, never let anyone define your worth. Not even the people who gave you life. Family doesn't start with blood. Family is where you're chosen, loved, and seen. Fully, unconditionally. And in the end, I chose myself. And that's the best choice I ever made. From my own story, I've learned that sometimes to find peace and true worth, you have to walk away from the chains labeled family. Blood doesn't guarantee love, and sacrifice doesn't always bring gratitude. I no longer seek validation from those who once treated me as an extra. Now, I live with self-respect, gratitude for my past, and a strong commitment to build a family where everyone is loved without condition. What do you think about Jennifer's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to follow the channel to explore more inspiring and heartfelt real-life stories about family and life. I stared at the post-it note slapped diagonally across my computer screen. Race. Handle the furlough client files this morning. And pick up Dad's suit from the dry cleaners. No birthday wishes. Not a single line acknowledging that I was turning 30 today. Just another list of errands. Like every other day. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled, the sterile fluorescent lights highlighting the hollow pit in my chest. After 8 non-stop years working at my family's investment firm, what they proudly called the Radley legacy, I was still just the eldest daughter running errands for everyone. No executive title, no bonus, no recognition. The office doors swung open. Tell me you're not working on your birthday again. Tasha's voice, my closest coworker, cut through the silence, familiar and exasperated. She walked in holding a tiny cupcake, topped with a silver spiral candle. I swear, if your name weren't on the birth certificate, your family would have forgotten you exist. I forced a weak smile, eyes fixed on the lonely candle. At least you remembered. Tasha glanced at the note on my screen and rolled her eyes. Seriously? On your actual birthday, and they still send you to pick up your dad's dry cleaning? I didn't need to answer. She already knew. Last year, on this exact day, my mother, Cynthia Radley, the woman praised as the strategic brain behind the firm's success, threw an elaborate evening party for a major client from New York. When I gently reminded her it was my birthday, she brushed it off. Grace, you're 30. Who still throws birthday parties? Speaking of disasters, I murmured, glancing toward the hallway as the unmistakable click of red stilettos echoed closer. Charlotte, my younger sister, strutted in, designer purse in hand. Without so much as a knock. Grace, Dad wants the furlough file on his desk before noon. Mom also said you need to double-check the dinner menu for tonight's event. She paused, eyeing the cupcake. Oh, is it someone's birthday? Tasha nearly choked on her coffee. You can't be serious right now. Charlotte squinted. Is it Grace's? Oh, right. Birthday? What, 30? 1. I nodded, saying nothing. But Tasha couldn't hold it in. She's your sister. And you seriously didn't know today was her birthday? Charlotte shrugged. I just said it, didn't I? Anyway, happy birthday, Grace. We should totally do dinner sometime. I knew exactly what sometime meant. Never. Charlotte had never made time for me unless she needed a loan or someone to fix her presentation errors. She turned to leave, tossing over her shoulder. Don't forget the file, Dad's on edge. The door shut behind her, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume. I opened my phone. In silence, I logged into my banking app. For the past few months, I'd quietly been selling off every gift they'd ever given me. Unopened luxury items, wrong-sized clothes, damaged jewelry. A collection of indifference disguised as thoughtfulness. The number on the screen made me press my lips together. My heart sped up. It wasn't enough to change the world, but it was enough to change my life. Tasha, I said, turning my laptop toward her. A picture of a seaside resort filled the screen. Villas perched over crystal-clear water. What do you think about this place? Her eyes widened. Grace, this place is insanely expensive. The kind with a private butler and a glass floor over the ocean. I clicked book now without hesitation. Exactly. And they won't know a thing. Until I'm already there. I still remember last year's birthday clearly. That morning, I walked into the office clinging to a sliver of hope. I'd braced myself for no celebration, but maybe. A text? A birthday call from Mom? No. Instead, Cynthia Radley posted a photo on Instagram. Her in a silver silk dress, standing beside the firm's top client, with the caption, "Tonight, welcoming Manhattan's investors to the Radley family." That night, I stayed late at work, past 10 p.m., fixing the data errors in Charlotte's report. My mom sparkled under the chandelier, giving toasts with champagne, never once looking my way. No one remembered I'd turned 30 that day. I went home with a store-bought cupcake and a silk scarf from Mom, still tagged with the company's corporate gift label. After that night, I started keeping track of every item they gave me. The dress Charlotte handed me for when you feel confident enough, 2 sizes too small. The leather bag Mom borrowed from a client event, then handed to me with, "It's not really my style." The bracelet Dad claimed was a family heirloom, actually a promotional gift from a Leighton hotel auction. I didn't throw anything away, I sold it all. I created a private account, anonymous, on a resale platform. Forgotten items, recycled gifts, tokens of obligation. With each notification of a sale, I didn't feel guilty. I felt justice. The bracelet Mom used to wear in her younger days, borrowed and never asked back, fetched nearly $4,000 from a vintage jewelry collector. The earrings I received after closing a major presentation, later discovered under a former employee's name on the invoice, sold for over $2,500. I realized something. They had never actually given me anything. They only passed around objects to keep up the illusion of a perfect Radley family. And me? I was the acceptable daughter, never praised enough to be spotlighted, never flawed enough to be let go. I took a photo of each item sold, not out of spite, but to remind myself I deserve more. I didn't know what I'd do with the money until I stumbled upon a photo of Maluia Shores Resort in a travel blog. Villas floating above the sea, transparent glass floors, sunrise pouring straight into the bedroom, private butler, beachfront spa, sunrise yoga. I stared at the images, unblinking. And for the first time in years, the part of me that had been tired of being the dependable eldest stirred awake. I had worked nonstop for 8 years, never once took a full holiday. I stayed in the office when my mom went to France, when Charlotte flew to Hawaii, when the whole family attended Christmas dinner with my aunt's in-laws. And I was the one assigned to double-check the Q4 expense report. Enough. I opened the flight booking tab. Without a second of hesitation, I selected a business class ticket, an oceanfront villa, and 3 premium services: private transfer, personal chef, and a week-long yoga retreat. A 14-day vacation. 14 days of not being the Radley daughter, not the invisible employee, not the shadow behind my mother's banquet table. I booked everything under a different name. Grace Holden, my grandmother's maiden name. The only person who ever told me, "You don't have to become someone to deserve love." I saved all the details onto a private hard drive, disconnected my phone from the company calendar, forwarded emails to Charlotte, sent Dad the furlough files, encrypted with my birth date as the password. If they wanted to open it, fine. They just had to remember what day I was born. As I switched off the office lights, Tasha looked up from the desk across from mine, eyes wide in disbelief. "Grace, what are you doing?" Smiled, the first real smile I'd allowed myself in years. Finding myself. I left home at 4 a.m. under a sleepy California sky. No one knew. No one cared enough to ask. The car arrived quietly in front of my apartment building. The driver wore a uniform and white gloves and bowed slightly as he greeted me by the name printed on the ticket. Ms. Grace Holden. No Radley. No one else. Just me. I left my company phone in the drawer. Meetings, emails, group chats. All unsynced the night before. I'd also forwarded the entire furlough folder to Charlotte with a short note. "Don't worry. You're better at this than me." The business class flight carried me to Maui in just over 5 hours. When I stepped off the plane, it felt like my feet had been freed from a decade of dragging chains. A resort representative was already waiting with a sign. They led me through a private route, away from the main guest entrance, then onto a small speedboat. 15 minutes later, I stepped onto Maluhia Island, a private island serving only a limited number of guests. My villa still alone, directly facing the sea, floor-to-ceiling glass panels, smooth stone tiles cool under bare feet. On the table, a chilled towel, a fresh coconut, and a handwritten note. Welcome to Maluhia Shores. If you need anything at all, please call Marcus. Marcus, my personal butler, appeared right on cue. Tall, lean, dressed in crisp white with linen gloves. He bowed politely. Miss Grace, it's a pleasure to be at your service during your stay. That first afternoon, I wore a lightweight maxi dress that fluttered like sea breeze, stretched out on a wooden chaise by the infinity pool. In front of me, the ocean spread out endlessly in deep emerald blue. I snapped a photo. My legs crossed at the end of the chair, cocktail in hand, the sun setting far in the distance. The golden light caught the reflection in my sunglasses, the very ones I'd bought with money from selling the shoes Charlotte left in my car trunk 2 years ago. I posted the photo on Instagram. No location tag, no mentions, just the caption. Sometimes you have to disappear to find out who was really there. 3 minutes later, 12 likes. 10 minutes later, 3 texts from Charlotte, 2 missed calls from Mom, and 1 urgent email from Dad, titled, "Where are you, Grace?" I locked my phone and flipped its screen down. No more frantic messages from Charlotte begging me to fix her last-minute presentation errors. No more rushed calls from Mom demanding I fix the catering situation right now. No more urgent emails from Dad. Only the sound of waves slapping gently against the villa deck. And silence? A luxury I'd never known until now. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. Not for a meeting, not to print documents. Marcus had already set out hot tea, a cool towel, and a yoga mat on the terrace. I did a few stretches, feeling my body ease into its own rhythm. My rhythm. Not the company's schedule. Not anyone else's expectations. My phone kept lighting up. Back in the States, it was likely around 11 p.m. A message from Mom. "Charlotte said you ran off. Call me immediately." I didn't reply. Instead, I took a photo of breakfast. Fruit carved into orchid shapes, tiny pastries on white porcelain. I posted another photo. The caption was simple. "Welcome to freedom." Tasha texted just before noon. "They be right back. Charlotte just tore through your office looking for your files. Your mom called the CEO and told him you've gone missing. Police haven't been contacted yet, but HR's starting to panic." I read the message, closed my eyes, and leaned back into the cushioned chair. The ocean air carried hints of salt and eucalyptus slipping into my hair, across my skin. "Let them panic," I whispered. I hadn't disappeared from the world, I'd only disappeared from their world. The one where I was always behind a curtain, always the backup plan, always the name no one remembered. Until I wasn't there anymore. By midday on the 3rd day, social media began to buzz. I hadn't planned to make a scene, truly, but the way my mother, Cynthia Radley, called me 3 times in a row and left increasingly theatrical voicemails, as if I'd triggered a financial crisis, changed my mind. The first voicemail, cold and clipped. "Where are you? Call me back immediately. This is not the time for childish games." The second, sharper. "Do you realize I had to cancel lunch with the Harringtons because you vanished? Charlotte's in tears because she can't open the file." The third, downright dramatic. "Grace, you're bringing shame on this family. This is selfish and reckless." I calmly posted a new photo on Instagram. I was sitting on the wooden edge of the villa's dock, legs dangling into the clear blue sea, a glass of fresh pineapple juice beside me, sunglasses reflecting the soft, streaked clouds overhead. Caption: "Not everyone who disappears wants to be found. Some just want to be left alone." "Charlotte, what the hell are you doing? Mom is freaking out. The whole company is in panic mode. Dad slammed his hand on the desk because the furlough file won't open. Did you lock it?" I replied briefly. "Grace. Not locked, just protected. The password is my birthday, if you remember it." The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then returned. Charlotte, were you born in June, or was it April? I didn't answer. Tasha texted with a workplace update. Tasha, the whole executive team is in emergency mode. Charlotte is losing it after getting the password wrong 3 times. Your dad is having IT check the office cameras to see if anyone accessed your computer. I nearly laughed. Grace, they still haven't remembered my birthday? Tasha, Charlotte just screamed. She was born in summer. I remember because I was in college. Grace, Charlotte only lasted 2 semesters in college. Tasha, bingo! The whole room burst out laughing. I wasn't sure whether to be sad or relieved. 8 years. I never missed a reporting cycle, never submitted anything late. I helped Charlotte move out of her old apartment, stayed with Mom through her wrist surgery, filled in for Dad during an emergency board meeting because he was stuck on the golf course. But my birthday? None of the 3 of them could recall it. That evening, I reopened Instagram. The likes were spiking. So were the comments. Charlotte, what's going on? Where did Grace go? Cynthia Radley posted about never losing family values, but her daughter's living in paradise. She's thrown how many galas and couldn't throw one birthday for her own daughter? Someone even edited a clip from my mother's gala speech last year where she emphasized family is the foundation of all success, overlaid with a photo of me sitting alone by the pool, captioned, Foundation, they forgot their daughter's birthday. I let out a long breath. Everything was slipping from their control. My phone lit up again. Charlotte was calling via FaceTime. I let it ring for a bit before answering. Her face appeared. Disheveled hair, mascara smudged. Grace, please stop this. Mom's crying, Dad is in full meltdown, and She bit her lip. I'm sorry. I really don't remember your birthday. I raised an eyebrow. It's okay. I used to think it didn't matter either. So, what's the password? She asked quietly. I looked out at the ocean, where the sun was melting into deep red clouds. It's the date you scheduled your engagement photo shoot last year. Charlotte paused. That was your birthday. I nodded, then ended the call. Later that night, Tasha sent one last message. Tasha, your mom just posted a photo of you 2 as kids with the caption, Family is forever. First comment, she remembers photos better than her daughter's birthday. I gave a faint smile, flipping to a new page in my notebook. In the margin, Marcus had written a small note. Tomorrow's itinerary, scuba class, afternoon tea, and mochi making session. Would you like to attend all? I responded instantly. Yes, and 1 glass of champagne before dinner, please. I put down my pen and closed the notebook. Everything was still chaos across the ocean, but here I was calm. And I'd never felt this kind of peace before. A message from Seth, my older brother, came in close to midnight. Seth, just saw your poolside photo. Epic. Mom told the relatives you're off meditating somewhere with no cell service. Oh, by the way, just booked my ticket. See you in 72 hours. I laughed. Seth had always been like that, quiet, witty, and perfectly timed. We're siblings, but rarely on the same side. When I got pulled into the grind of the family business, Seth took a different path. Studied industrial design, then joined a startup in Seattle. Dad once called him a dreamer with no future. But Seth never got bitter. He just kept his distance. Far enough not to get hurt, close enough to always keep an eye on me. The next morning, I received an email from Violet, the company's head accountant, and someone my mom had long dismissed for dressing in a way that doesn't reflect the Radley brand. Violet? Grace, I know I shouldn't be sending this via the company system, but I saw what you did. And you're not crazy. You're just the first one brave enough to stand up. She attached a file, the internal salary report from the past 3 years. I opened it, my heart pounding. Next to my name, a salary lower than even the newest hires. No bonuses after year 4. Charlotte, with less education and 1/3 of my experience, was making twice as much. Another sheet popped up. Records of Mom's personal expenses. First-class flights, beauty appointments, even hotel bookings for a so-called VIP partner. All filed under marketing budget. At the bottom of the file, Violet left one final note. I've backed up everything and sent it to the Department of Labor through official channels. If I suddenly disappear from the system, you'll know why. Less than 3 hours later, Violet was suspended by my mother. Tasha's message came through right after that. They should just walked Violet out of the office. Your mom lost it and called her a traitor. But Violet wasn't scared. She left a printed copy of the report right on your mom's desk before leaving. Grace, what did she say? Tasha! Nothing. But her face turned red like she'd been electrocuted. That afternoon, I was sitting at the tea table when Marcus brought over a handwritten letter. Someone sent this from the airport, Ms. Grace. I opened it. A pencil sketch, me reading under the villa terrace, wind tossing my hair. At the bottom, it simply said, Freedom looks good on you, sir. I looked up and saw him standing right there, backpack slung over one shoulder, sunglasses hooked on his shirt collar. He walked over, said nothing, just waved. I stood and hugged him tightly. You know, he said as we sat down, this is the first time you've ever done something without asking anyone's permission. I poured the tea, eyes still following the horizon. How does it feel? Like I don't owe anyone an explanation. Seth smiled. Welcome to the rest of your life. That evening, we opened a bottle of wine on the balcony. Tasha called, this time a group call with Violet included. Hot off the press, Violet said, her voice calm and steady as always. Today, I received confirmation from the Department of Labor. They've launched a formal investigation into Radley and Associates. I set my glass down. That was fast. Because I've been preparing for this for 3 months, you just pressed the button, Tasha added. Also, you should know, the list of underpaid employees is long. It wasn't just you, Grace. I took a deep breath, then opened a video file on my phone. The screen showed the familiar orange box, the Birkin bag my mom once borrowed from a client, then gifted to me. I'd filmed myself packing it for resale, with the sale receipt overlaid. Nearly $20,000. I posted the video with a short caption. What they didn't need might be exactly what set you free. The next morning, my phone lit up non-stop. Messages from former employees, people who were denied promotions without explanation, people who left because of a toxic environment, people once labeled not a cultural fit. They all wrote the same thing. Thank you for doing what we never dared to. I didn't reply to each one, but I read them all. And for the first time, I felt grounded. Across the ocean, my mother was probably plotting her next move. Charlotte was likely scrambling to regain control. But this time, I wasn't alone. And they no longer owned the script. I lifted my cup of tea, sipping slowly, watching Seth as he tinkered on his laptop, designing a logo for our new project. I smiled to myself. The game had only just begun. That afternoon, as the sunlight faded over the water, I sat on the villa balcony, laptop open, a quiet cocktail at my side. The ocean breeze whispered, It's time. Seth stepped out from inside, earbuds in hand and a knowing grin on his face. You sure you want to do this right now? I nodded. If not today, then never. We sat side by side, my laptop screen slowly filled with video frames. First up, my mother. Cynthia? In a silk dress, still picture-perfect except for her puffy eyes and uneven breath. Then Charlotte, clutching a glass of orange juice she wasn't drinking, eyes sharp as if I'd just torn down the family tree. Finally, my father, Charles, appeared. Face dark, lips pressed tight. I smiled politely. So politely it made the air feel heavier. Thanks for agreeing to meet. It's sunset here, so let's get right to it. No one responded. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. Dad leaned back with arms crossed. Mom tried to keep her composure. I shared my screen and opened the first tab. The gift resale ledger. Chanel handbag, Charlotte gifted. 32341. Never paid for Christmas. $2,850. A tech men's watch Dad forgot and asked me to hold on to it. Mom's old wedding dress, given to honor tradition, $6,000. Birkin bag used at the Boston conference, $19,500. Total, $46,550, traded for my first taste of freedom. Mom finally spoke. Grace, you kept all those things just to sell them? I shrugged. I kept them to remember. And when they stopped meaning anything beyond reminding me I was always the afterthought, I figured I'd trade them for something with real value. I clicked over to the next tab, Internal Salary Comparison Chart. Let me know if you'd like me to continue translating the next section, the salary reveal and reaction, or if you'd like this part formatted for video script, subtitles, or narration. My salary over the past 5 years? Almost unchanged, no bonuses, no benefits. Next to it was Charlotte's figure, who joined 2 years after me but was earning nearly double, plus extra allowances like beauty treatments, a personal stylist, and image consulting. Charlotte tilted her chin. You think I don't deserve it? I looked her straight in the eye. It's not that you don't deserve it. It's that you never had to earn it to get it. My father's voice hardened. You're destroying the family's reputation over a few numbers on a spreadsheet. No, I replied slowly. I'm just reassigning value to things that were once dismissed. I switched to the final tab, my resignation email. Scheduled to send exactly 5 minutes before the meeting started. I've withdrawn from the company. The handover files are being sent to Charlotte. Charlotte's face turned pale. You passed everything to me without asking? I can't even open the file. I leaned back in my chair. You still haven't figured out the password. My mom cut in. Grace, don't be childish. This is serious. I opened the last slide. Just 4 words. April 14th. My birthday. No one said a word. All 3 froze at once. Funny, isn't it? I said. That the key to one file is a single date, and not one of the 3 people who call themselves my family could remember it. Seth stood up from his seat and raised his coconut water like a toast at an independence party. Cheers! I ended the call with a light tap. The screen went black, but the space around me was full of light. The sunset seemed to burn away the last remnants of their old masks. Marcus stepped out from inside, holding 2 place settings. Dinner's ready. Would you like more champagne, Miss Grace? I nodded. Yes. And a glass for Seth, too. 1 week after the video call with my family, I stood in the glass-walled office of the investment division at Maluhia Shores Resort. Below was the coastline, stretching like a black ink line across the horizon. On my desk was an employment contract, Regional Investment Director for North America. I had just signed it when Matthew, the resort's general manager, entered with the legal team. We just confirmed something interesting as well, he said, his tone steady. The Henderson account officially transferred to Maluhia Holdings this morning. I nodded, unsurprised. I had spent nearly 3 quiet years building trust with the Hendersons, something my mother always dismissed because they didn't match the brand image. But they hadn't forgotten who remembered their daughter's name, sent birthday cards, and listened patiently to every small risk in their portfolio. Matthew continued, I'd like you to personally present Maluhia's sustainable investment strategy to our major regional partners. And I hear you have a bit of a family network we'll need to address. I smiled. More than a network. The board meeting at Radley & Associates was scheduled for Monday morning. I showed up without notice, but no one looked surprised. Rumors had spread across the trading floor since the Department of Labor investigation made headlines in the finance sections of 3 major newspapers. To walk into the boardroom in a sand-colored suit, something I'd bought from a local artisan shop in Maluhia. No logos, no brand labels, but it fit like it was made for me. Seth followed behind, carrying a briefcase in his new role as independent financial consultant. My mother sat at the head of the table, back stiff as if preparing to deliver a speech. My father was next to her, eyes fixed on me. Charlotte stood in the corner, scrolling on her phone. The board chairman spoke first. We invited Miss Grace here today to present a new strategic partnership proposal between Maluhia Holdings and Radley. I stepped forward, plugged the USB into the display screen. The first slide appeared. Meaningful growth strategy, not just for clients, but for those who serve them. I didn't look at my parents. I looked directly at the board. The same people who used to nod and smile at galas but never once asked what I earned. They presented. Maluhia Holdings will relocate the entire Northeast investment portfolio to a unit under my direct management. Major clients like Henderson, Tran McCall, and Heller Group have already agreed to join the new platform. But I'm not here to dismantle Radley and Associates. I'm here to propose a new model of collaboration. The room thickened with silence. I clicked to the next slide. Conditions for partnership. 1. Radley and Associates must restructure its senior management team. 2. Cynthia and Charles Radley were reassigned to strategic advisory roles with no direct executive authority. 3. All salary bonus and promotion policies must be reviewed and standardized under independent oversight from Maluhia. 4. And finally, I will not return as an employee. I will be a partner, or nothing at all. Cynthia and Charles Radley were reassigned to strategic advisory roles with no more direct control. All salary, bonus, and promotion policies had to be reviewed and standardized under independent oversight from Maluhia. And finally, I would not return as an employee. I'd be a partner, or nothing at all. My mother froze. My father tapped the table lightly. You expect to run the company that belongs to your own family? I looked him straight in the eye. I'm not asking for anything. I already left. I only came back to set terms. Whether you accept them, that's up to you. Charlotte stepped forward, about to say something, but no one looked at her. All eyes in the room were glued to the updated performance chart, showing that Radley had lost 21% of assets under management within just 3 weeks of my departure. The chairman asked bluntly, if we proceed with this partnership, who would represent Maluhia as the lead? I stared at him without blinking. I would. A few minutes later, the board began voting. 6 in favor, 2 abstained, 1 against. My mother. Seth recorded the outcome, his voice steady and firm. The proposal is approved. Cynthia Radley and Charles Radley are officially reassigned to advisory roles. All executive authority will transfer to the new partner group within 7 days. My father bowed his head. My mother sat motionless, hands clenched around the chair arms. I gathered my documents and walked out of the room without looking back. There was nothing left to explain. For the first time in my life, I walked out of the Radley building without feeling like I carried a weight I couldn't name. I returned to Maluhia shores on a morning with a light drizzle. The sky was soft gray, the ocean calm, as if it had never seen a storm. Seth walked beside me, one hand pulling his suitcase, the other holding a hot cup of coffee. He said nothing, but I knew he understood the lightness I felt in my chest. On the villa deck, Violet was already seated, wearing a white linen shirt, her laptop open as she fine-tuned the financial chart we planned to present at the upcoming resort board meeting. She looked up when she saw me and gave one of her rare smiles. Welcome home. Inside, Shanice was arranging flowers, truly arranging them, not for an event, not for a VIP guest, just because she liked the scent of white orchids in the morning. And here, no one judged her for that. I set down my bag and stepped onto the deck, gazing at the coastline before me. A place that once was a refuge, now becoming a beginning. No more urgent emails. No more emergency messages. No more pats on the shoulder followed by turning away like I was background crew in my own life. I stepped into my new office, 2nd floor, ocean view, full glass walls. On the desk sat a new nameplate. Grace Radley Holden, Director of Strategic Investment. I lifted it gently, brushed a fingertip along the edge, then set it down squarely. Behind me on the wall was a map of our branch network expanding across California, Oregon, and British Columbia. No Radley name, no legacy to uphold. This was something I built, not something I carried. Seth came around the desk and set a small box in front of me. An official welcome gift from the board, and from me. I opened it. A simple wristwatch, matte steel face. Not the flashy luxury type my mother liked to flaunt at galas. Inside, a tiny engraving read, "You claimed your own." I fastened it gently. No words needed. That afternoon, we sat on the deck as light rain fell. Shanice brought out a tray of ginger tea. Violet was still scanning the reports, but her eyes had softened. Seth adjusted a green investment portfolio for a new client. Someone who once was a close family friend, but quietly transferred their account after reading the news. I leaned back and listened to the rain on the thatched roof. It felt like every cell in my body was reorganizing. No more defensive tension, no more need to prove myself. I was no longer part of the old system, and I no longer wanted to be a Radley. A week later, the financial market headlines read, Radley and Associates transfers executive control. Multiple major clients confirm withdrawal. The photo showed my mother, Cynthia, standing outside the company building, staring into the distance, refusing to answer questions. My father didn't appear. As for Charlotte, her social media accounts went private 2 days ago. That afternoon, Matthew, the general manager of Malahia, invited me to the rooftop glasshouse for a private dinner, a test run for our new investment tasting menu, designed for the strategic partners I would now lead. When I arrived, he pointed to the long table where Seth, Violet, and Shanice were already seated. I figured you'd want to dine with the real executive family. I pulled out a chair between them and raised my glass of sparkling water. No applause needed, no lavish toasts. Just the golden hour light brushing gently across their faces. I looked around. No blood relatives, no inherited ties. Just the people who didn't turn their backs when I stood up. And then I realized something small but undeniable. Family isn't where you're born. Family is who stays when you change. Grace's story isn't just about walking away from a family that dismissed her worth. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes you have to leave the place once called home to truly find yourself. Family isn't defined by blood, but by presence, support, and respect. In a world that often defines women by how well they serve others, Grace chose to rise, take ownership of her story, and redefine success on her own terms. What do you think about Grace's journey and how she redefined family and success? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow this channel for more powerful and emotional stories about family life.